All right. So, hi everyone, good afternoon. I hope everyone is safe wherever you are. So, welcome to this knowledge session. This is on a very important topic on sustainable human behavior and its impact on well-being of our colleagues, our family members, in our society, in the organizations. And we have an expert to unpack this for us, Bimi, and we'll just introduce her in a while. We all know we are approaching a World Mental Health Day, which is in October, about a week, a little more than a week away from us. And we thought that it was just the right time for us to talk about these topics and make ourselves a little more aware and discuss a few things which are going on. While mental health is an issue which is spoken, I mean, as never before in last couple of years, it is everyday talk in every forum. This is most important topic that we do talk about. And as Enabling World, we are very much committed on this topic, and we have done a lot of knowledge sessions and our interventions around this. Okay, so let's go forward. Before I speak about introduce the speaker to you, a little bit about Enabling World. Many of you would know Enabling World is a end-to-end HR consulting firm, and it's about a decade-old organization, boutique HR consulting firm. And we enable the people for their success and get the best out of them through 5 key levers, which is onto HR technology, into learning, into HR consulting, HR outsourcing, and also employee well-being. And the last bullet, not the least, is the topic that we're going to talk about today. In terms of the trainings, we have into 4 key buckets: the leadership, managerial training, HR functional training, because we come with huge HR experience as a consulting and as practitioners into various corporates. Then employee well-being, as I mentioned, is a very strong pillar, and especially last 2 years we have seen the huge request and the demand for that. So we are very happy to contribute there. All right, so let me present Mimi here. Mimi is a good friend as well, and my ex-colleague. I had a good fortune of working with her for a few years when I was in IBM, and she was also in IBM, and we happened to work in the same business unit. We had some good fun together. So Mimi, first of all, thank you very much for spending time here with us and agreeing to come and talk as a specialist on this topic. Mimi is currently is a life coach and a facilitator. She's based out of Pune, and she has close to 2 decades of rich experience into working with marquee companies, great companies like IBM, HCL, Neways, and Vodafone, etc. But she has been into HR all through, and she has done fantastic role into employee well-being, into strategic HR, and different areas. Compensation has been one of her, topic. And in the corporates, the well-being comes under total rewards actually. So there's a close linkage of what she's doing, and she's a coach. She's also a psychologist. She's an MBTI DISC certified professional facilitator and a coach, and she's pursuing her psychology. So she's a lifelong learner. So I was amazed when I heard she's still doing learning and upgrading in terms of clinical psychology, which is the in thing today. So Mimi, thank you very much for being here, and we are very honored. So we all will look forward to hear from you. So over to you, and have a great session.
Thank you so much, Sanjeev, for those kind words, and a warm welcome to all of you. Going forward, so basically the topic is on sustainable human development, right, for wellness. And if you talk about sustainable development, we obviously have to talk about United Nations, right? This is the UN 2030 agenda basically. And the UN actually adopted the 2030 agenda for sustainable development in 2015. So this is basically a global partnership that provides a blueprint really, for peace, prosperity for people and the planet. And of course this is for now and into the future. So the P's that we have here are P for peace, P for prosperity, P for people, and the P for planet, right? And the pledge that has been taken in this collective journey is really that no one will be left behind, right? And how do we do that? That's through the action that is being taken through these 17 sustainable development goals that you see on the screen right here. Now, moving on, Sanjeev, if you can just, yeah, correct. So basically, the focus, SDG 3, good health and well-being, right? The focus is on, the aiming to ensure that, healthy lives and promote well-being for all ages, right? And if you see, this is actually key, right? For almost all the other 16 goals in the SDGs, they are actually somewhere related to health, or that achievement will actually contribute to the health indirectly, right? So individuals and societies, therefore, at large, will achieve the goals of sustainability by, how will they do that? How will they achieve the SDGs? By actually engaging in sustainable behavior. And that's really what we want to understand more, right? So if we go on further, so basically, if you see, sustainable behavior is, it's sort of deliberate and effective actions that that really focus towards providing well-being of all human beings, like all living beings in that sense, right? Including present and future generation. And how do you do that? By embracing people's values, norms, beliefs, and sense of responsibility. So it's again, if you see very clearly, we have to take action, right? So it's deliberate and effective actions. Those are very key words, right? For what? For the well-being of all living beings, not only the present, but future generations. And how do we do that? By embracing people's values, norms, beliefs, and sense of responsibility, right? So behavior here in this sense, right? I mean, sustainable behavior in that sense, it actually encompasses, pro-ecological, frugal in the sense, being economical about what we buy, what we take in. It is altruistic, which is selfless, work for others, and equitable, that is fair and being impartial, right? So when we actually do these behaviors, this actually results in a positive psychological consequence, in the terms that we feel more satisfied. There's this there's this psychological well-being. We feel happy, so all of that, it actually leads to all of these positive consequences, right? So we look going forward, let's just look quickly at the definition of behavior. So human behavior is nothing, it's basically the potential and the express capacity, right, of human beings, to basically react or respond to internal and external stimuli, right? That's what it is. Behavior is nothing but the potential and express capacity of us to respond to internal and external stimuli, right? And WHO has actually defined wellness very simply. It just says it's a state of health, really. And it's an optimal state of health, a positive approach to living, right? And health here is very it's just not the physical part, right? Health is very clearly the physical, mental, and the social well-being. And it's just not an absence of disease. Often enough we always sort of relate health to the physical aspects, but that is not true. So WHO has that way very clearly categorically mentioned that it is the complete physical, mental, and the social well-being, right? So that is then becomes very, very crucial for us to understand this part. All right. So moving forward, then, it is very interesting, when we say behavior, right? It is something that we observe clearly, but there's so much of things that really happen for us to really behave in a particular way. So for example, it starts with something called the A, which is the activating event, right? Which is basically something that people experience, right? It could be any trigger, it could be any event, it could have happened when we were children, it could have happened now, right? Whenever it's some kind of an event, right? That's a trigger. Now, once that event happens, what happens is it leads to right or wrong assumptions that we start having about it, right? And once these assumptions are there, that lead to our beliefs. And these beliefs again lead to this lot of that self-talk that and thinking that goes on. I'm sure all of us go through that, right? There's this lot of self-talk, as if you're talking to someone else. Is this right? Is this no? This is how I should do, I want to do, right? There's this should, would, those things that keep happening in our brain, right? There's this lot of self-talk that happens. Now, based on that, when we do that, right, it could be again positive or negative, right? And that actually leads to this emotions and feelings that we have. And based on that emotions and feelings, we actually act or behave, right? That's usually the cycle that happens. And often enough, when actually people go through emotional turmoils or things like that, right? And this is actually a part of therapy, which is called the cognitive behavior therapy, CBT. So the approach that usually that therapy takes, and when you actually talk to a therapist or a counselor or whatever, so this is the behavior that is happening. They actually look at the self-talk that is happening. They really go deeper and deeper and deeper, and then find out, now if the self-talk is happening, what is the belief that is leading to it, right? What is the trigger that has led to that, post and pre, so that's this whole that's how usually the process follows as far as the behavior is concerned, right? So hence, if you see, it's an ABC model, correct? A is activating event, B is our beliefs and thoughts, and C leads to the consequences, okay, of whatever is the experience that we have, right? If we, Sanjeev, you
Yeah.
can, yeah, yeah, all right. All right, so now let's look at this very interesting thing. Okay, it's called the 10 life states, right? And I've deliberately kept those emoticons there because I think it sort of explains exactly what it is, right? So if you see the entire cycle that we talked about, right, that ABC of activating event, then the B for the beliefs and thoughts, and the C for consequences, right? These actually result in broadly 10 different life states or conditions of mind, right? And like I mentioned, these emoticons will give you an idea about that, right? Now, if you look at it, I'll just quickly, go through that. So state of despair, right? D. Despair is one, someone who's going through extreme suffering. Okay, there's no hope or for future. That's the life state that the person is in, the state of despair. In the state of hunger, if you see, there's this intense craving. I want this, I want that, and somehow that craving is not satisfied. I want something, I get that, but I have craving another for something else. So that's the life state of hunger, right? Then the life state of animality is driven by pure instinct, right? It's like the law of the jungle in that sense, right? They lack reason. People who are in that state, right, they lack reason because they go by pure instinct. The state of anger is something, what it says is that people, who are in this state, they become arrogant, they feel superior, right? That's why they, so they sort of behave in that particular manner, where they think that they are superior and hence others are all inferior. They know everything, right? That's the life state that they come from. The state of rationality is something which is, where here people are calm, they're reasonable because they're using the rational mind here, right? And most of us are actually in this life state, but what happens in this life state really is, this is also a sense of apathy, right? Okay, I'm fine, I'm doing okay in that sense, right? And it's very easy to really dip down to the other states of despair, hunger, animality, anger there, right? Then the state of joy is something where, you feel this when your desire is fulfilled. I want that toy, I want that car, I have always wanted that, promotion, right? I have that fulfillment of that desire, and and I feel really happy, it's ecstasy really. But the problem, what happens is, we think this joy is permanent. That is where the catch is, right? Then if we go higher up in the sense, the learning and realization life state is where we now start exploring the true meaning of life. We gain knowledge, we learn from others, we get insight. That realization is that aha moment. When you're really, you're learning something, gaining knowledge, and then you understand why this is the way it is, right? That aha moment, right? You gain that insight, right? Then you move on, and but all of these states that are there, they're all related to me, right? My to the individual, to I, right? It's all related to that. Then gradually we actually move into the life state, which is the well-being for self and others. Now this is actually, of course, we'll cover that in the next slide. This is actually where sustainable behavior happens, all right? And then the final one, if you see, pure happiness, I think we all aspire to be this cool dude in that sense, right? Sun that brightens up everyone's life, right? Where the people in this life state, they really enjoy happiness, which is not dependent on others, right? They're not influenced by ego. They're wise, right? They have this sense of freedom. This, I'm sure all of us aspire to be this. But what happens is usually we need to do a lot of work and lot of well-being for self and others to really get to that stage, right? And the interesting part here is that we all keep fluctuating among these life states, right? And but the attempt is to try and be in the higher states as much as we can. And of course that really comes with that realization stage, that learning stage. It comes with a lot of work that we do on ourselves, right? Now once we are aware, right, for example, I mean, if you see the fluctuating part, right, for example, once we are aware that we can action, say for an example, right, we got reward, right, we will actually be in that joy state, right? I wanted that and I got that, right? However, what happens is if we get a call, that a relative has met with an accident, what happens? We immediately drop to a lower state of despair, right? Now the key is, the whole idea about talking about this life state is that we get back into the learning and the realization. We try and find out what has happened, right? Rather than staying in that state of despair, we really then quickly come back into the learning and realization state and find out what has happened. And then we take actions based on the well-being life state, right? Where the sustainable behavior happens. Okay. So that's basically what, there's a broad level, the life states that really, we go through.
So maybe while we go around, there's a
Yeah.
question, if you would mind sharing your comments. So Rahul is asking, where do these classification of the 10 states,
Yeah.
mental state or life states come from? I mean, what's the
Right.
origin?
Yeah.
Where does it come from? If
Yeah.
you could
Yeah.
share
Yeah.
that
Yes,
quickly
yes,
before we
surely,
move to the
surely.
next. Thank you.
So yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because this is actually comes from the Buddhist philosophy of the light states. So if you actually go and check the web on 10 worlds, you will get a lot of information on this, right? And it's sort of it is so close to what we go through, right? And because we say Buddhism is reason, Buddhism is daily life, which is why I picked up this, because it actually, it just fits so well, with this entire concept, right? So yeah, so this is the Buddhist concept, Sanjeev. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah. So when we're talking about the state of self and others, right? So very clearly, it of course it says that the whole idea here is we help people, right? And where it comes from, right? It comes from that where we have that realization, right, which again comes from the learning and the realization state, that every human being has the right to bloom to their full potential, right? And what is our role? I mean, each of us, we are all social beings, right? What is our role? We all need to be that catalyst, right? So that we can enable people. And I'm so and so beautiful, right? Enabling, that we should enable everyone to really bloom to their full potential. And this could be anywhere, right? In any scenario. It could be at work. Of course, it could be at work. If you're a leader, if you're a team member, even as an individual of a team, right? If we actually sort of manifest this life state in that sense, right? If we actually work on this life state, if we actually, once we are aware and we work on it, right, then we will really be helping people to really achieve their full potential. Again, a lot of times we probably might be doing at work, but we forget to do it at home, right? So it's said that charity starts at home. So let's start doing that at home, to our kids, to our parents, right, to our spouses, to our partners, right? So that's basically what it is. So we then become the catalyst once we actually work from being that doing that sustainable behavior, right? So the key here therefore is we work for the self. Now the other aspect here is, it's a beautiful aspect here, is that we work for ourselves as well as for others. So often enough, you will see that we might end up working for others, but we neglect ourselves. Now, that's not what it is, right? I think we all individually have equal right to be happy as others are. So the fact is that we work for our self well-being, and we take action for others. Okay. So that's basically what this state is, and this is where we actually through through working for others, this is the what we think in this life state is that I want to always help people. I come from that. That's the thought process that's there in my mind. That's a cognitive element that's there in my mind. What do I feel? I feel this deep compassion, deep empathy, doing something for someone, right? And then so remember the behavior model, right? So I think, I feel, and then what happens, I do the action. So what is my action? Very simple. I end up helping others in various ways depending on the context and on a need base, right? Yeah. All right. So while I was sort of researching a little bit on this, right, I thought this angle was really interesting to find out what's the psychology of sustainable behavior. And there's a lot of research that is available. Unfortunately, I could only do a little bit of research, but I'm sure there's lots of stuff available on the net, right? So. But I'll still sort of put some of them here for all of you, right? So one key thing is we've already discussed this: thinking drives behavior and behavior causes results, right? Hence what we need to do is we need the intervention therefore is needed in thinking, right? Because if we set the thinking right, then the behavior and actions will happen. All right. So hence there's a lot of work when work actually goes, and there's a lot of now that CBT approach is being taken a lot, right? That cognitive and then behavior approach, where we actually interventions happen a lot from in the thinking one, right? In the thinking part. Then the second is, human nature is to want to do good and leave the world a better place, right? Both intragenerationally and intergenerationally, right? I think that's good news. That we the nature is there in us to do good. It's just that what happens is because of circumstances, because of the experiences, because of those activating, event that has happened in our life, we we sort of we actually oscillate between those lower life states of anger, animality and all of that. So we sort of oscillate in that, right? And hence that effort is required, conscious effort is required for us actually to go up and go into the learning, realization, and the sustainable behavior life state, right? Then the third aspect that came up was that people are creatures of habit and resist change. I think all of us know about that, right? And so hence it is very important therefore that we have to actually support the change process, right? And we have to manage the resistance. So hence the habit formation becomes very important, the whole aspect of habit formation, right? Then and when we go on to the next slide, so basically it also says is that just give me a moment, Sanjeev. I think there's some issue here. Yeah. Okay. No, I think, yeah, I got this. My screen, I think, froze for a minute. All right.
All right.
So, yeah. So then the fourth one is basically, if you see what came out is that an individual's thoughts, feelings, and actions can be influenced by other individuals by several means, like by words, by observation of actions, by observation of the consequences of actions, right? So basically a lot of social learning that happens, right? We learn from each other. That's what it means, right? And if you see, I mean, like it says, is that we also observe the consequences of actions. Wait and watch, and we see the behavior is happening, right? And then we also wait and see, okay, what's the consequence of that behavior, right? And then we say, okay, then we take a call, do I go ahead with that behavior or not, right? Because if the consequence is positive, right? For example, my child is asked for, something, right? And I have two children, right? And one person has asked for something, and then for example an ice cream, and and I give that ice cream to that person, and without really scolding or something like that, then the other child will obviously say, I want that ice cream too, right? So it's again learning and observing, and then the consequences of the action also, right? So like a lot of social learning, right? Then the next one is basically also said is that cultivating happiness by propagating positive emotions, can support and sustain human change, right? Basically, we have to cultivate happiness. Look at the beautiful words that they've actually used. Cultivating happiness means we have to do that by positive emotions, right? So why? Because as human beings, we act or we change because we are emotionally charged to do so, right? Which means that any new behavior that promotes a positive experience has a significantly higher sustainable rate than new behaviors that have a negative connection, right? So hence any behavior which, like I said, has a positive experience, or a positive outcome, that that actually behavior will then be sustainable. Okay, so that's where it is. So hence the positive emotions are very important, very simple positive emotions, like a simple smile, a simple thank you, a gratitude note, paying a visit. In the current COVID times it doesn't work, but maybe you can't visit, just picking up the phone, talking, right? All of that, because what we are doing, we're actually cultivating that happiness in that person, right? That person feels happy inside, right? So then the other one is about the human values and spirituality hold important implications for influencing human behavior change, right? Here it is spirituality, not religion, both different, right? So values and spirituality, they actually also influence human behavior change, right? Because it's all about positivity, it's all about working for others, right? In that sense, right? Then social norms, right? They have the biggest impact on behavior. So we are all social animals. It sort of ties into the fact about learning by observation, right? So social norms are basically any kind of behavior that we want any group or in other society to follow, right? So that is it has a very impact on behavior. And from a sustainable development perspective, I mean, this is something that was coming up in the research, right? A lot of times, when we know maybe our neighbor is doing something, right? For example, they are taking steps to do do anything in the sense to composting, or they are trying to ensure that the garbage cans are the wet and the dry garbage are kept separately, or all of that. Then what happens, and when we get to know that, we usually tend to do that as well, because the social norms tells us that that is possible. Then what goes in my mind? Oh, all right, so that's the way they do it. Okay, maybe that's what's expected for us from us in that sense, right? So hence social norms become real big. They're probably one of the biggest impact on behavior, right? Then the so yeah. So before I come to that, Sanjeev, there's just two or three more that I wanted I just to
Sure,
share
sure.
quickly, right? So we all know that it is I said earlier, right? It is change is very deep rooted, or we know our habits are very deep rooted in that sense, right? So but the best part, that of course now there's a lot of research that is happening, is that change is possible through a kind of rewiring our brains because of neuroplasticity, right? So hence change is possible. Earlier we thought, okay, now this is what I am, it's not I can't change. But now, because of the so much of research in neuroscience, right, they've said that we can actually rewire our brain. So there's a lot of other tools and techniques that have come in, right? Any kind of meditation or any kind of positive affirmations, right? All of that have come in to really help us change, right? So then like I mentioned, of course, like successful change could be mindfulness, some choices, you actually focus on something, you actually intent. A lot of times even the pure act of really taking that determination that I want to change and really thinking about it actually also helps, right? So then so all of these are when we utilize all of these actions of mindfulness, choices, really taking that action of writing down our goals, focusing, repeating, right? When we continuously do that, right, we utilize this consistently, then the person's brain and behavior can then begin to adapt to the new processes, right? Then the other thing that came out very clearly was that we need to set behavioral expectations, and I think that's where again it's tied to the social norms. A lot of times, again, I think at work and even at home, right, we are not very clear about what is the behavior that I'm expecting, right? Even if you're a leader, right, what is the behavior I'm expecting, even if I am a team member, right? So setting behavior expectations actually also helps in really ensuring that people follow that, right, and hence sustaining that behavior, right? So those are a couple of points that really came up from whatever little research that I could do it.
And maybe just to add on to your
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
in the corporates, I mean, many of us are from HR background.
Right.
In performance management, it's very clear. it's not only what you do, but how do you do also, right? I mean, you may achieve your sales objective, but
Exactly.
if you don't collaborate, you don't help the team also grow, right? That's not a desired behavior. So I
Absolutely.
think there's a focus. I can relate to what you're saying, that it's not only what you do, but how do you do. And from the corporate context point of view, it's also very, very relevant, actually. And I think it is much more greater awareness in recent times than previous, in my view.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Sanjeev, and I think that's where we falter also, right? In the sense that we might have things in place, we might have possibly, this is what is required to, this is the behavior that you need to demonstrate as far as this role is concerned, right? We might have all of the competency mapping in place as well, but what happens is then, when you are actually sort of on the ground when you're implementing that, right? And then when you're not setting the expectations right, then of course, then that the gap happens in that sense, right?
Correct.
And that this has of course come up very well in the research process. Okay.
Sure.
Now, now let's look at what are the actions we can possibly take, for sustainable behavior. Now, of course, I have again mentioned some points here. I mean, these are suggested few, but I'm sure there will be more, and I'm sure when we discuss that after this, maybe from the audience, people can actually come up with more suggestions as well, right? So I think key here is we need to focus on habit formation, right? If I need to do that sustainable behavior, I really need to make that into a habit, right? So basically, so awareness, right? Now we know that. So now we've discussed about the mental states, right? We are aware about it. We know what sustainable behavior is, right? We know how we need to do that, right? So step one is actually awareness. Often enough, what happens, we are not aware, and hence I think there's a lot of time that we really need to spend in the learning and the realization life state, in that sense, right? Because once the awareness comes in, that's when you start thinking that, all right, this is how it is, I now need to sort of take action, right? Then you take action, right? And then once you've taken that action, we see the consequences of that action is that we get the reward. Because the reward is positive, then we want to repeat that action cycle, right? And then when with that repetition happening, we've talked about neuroplasticity, the new neural networks get formed in our brain, and then the habit gets formed, right? So hence, we effort is required in all of this, right? That's what it is, and it starts first with awareness. All right. Then then the next one is basically what we're talking about is learning to observe the mind. uh, Again, there are a lot of tools and techniques that are there now, right? Where we learn to observe the mind, and it could be meditation, it could be mindfulness exercises, it could be it could be someone who's doing yoga, it could be possibly someone going even for a run. Like, I mean, I go for a run. There are a lot of times when I'm actually on my run, and I'm doing that in the morning. There's a lot of time I'm actually reflecting what's going on, right? So everyone has a different way to do that, but it is very important to actually take up some tool, right, where we observe our mind, right? Because that is where all the fluctuation happens, right? And that is where, when that activating event happens, and that's when the mind really goes berserk. There's a lot of that self-talk keeps happening. So we really need to take a step aside and see what's happening there, right? So hence that tools and techniques, like I mentioned, is really needed to observe our mind. Then self-reflection time, right? It again leads to it actually leads up from observing the mind, right? I think we really need to ask those questions: what, why, when, where, who, how, right? So in the sense that we need to engage in some kind of think behavior, right? Which basically helps define situation in terms of the behaviors that created them, and why did this behavior happen, right? And what are the actions that I might take to really solve them. So basically trying to understand the cause and effect relationship that's there. right? And I think even what we need to do is maybe have this culture of having time for self reflection, even at work scenario, right? What happens typically, I mean, this is my thought, Sanjeev, that I thought, there's so much of time that we spend with each other at work, right? And so many discussion meetings that happen, and of course projects happen, and then you do a project analysis about how things went well and all of that. I think along with that, there's this really time that is required, that we really need to set aside, maybe in the calendar, to really self reflect. What is it that I learned from this, right? If I behaved something in some way, right? What is the trigger that led me to behave in that way, right? And then what are the actions that I can really take to solve that? It's I'm sure a lot of organizations might be doing it, but what I'm saying is bringing that in the culture of the organization, right? Maybe you're having a team meeting, and if you're a leader, you can say, okay, you know what, 10 minutes self reflection time. Anyone wants to say something, you can have someone actually share an experience, right? How that has really helped them be a better person or do very well, right? So that will then actually inculcate that habit of self-reflection, correct? I mean, you can do at work, you can do at home, right? I mean, just the whole idea is really, how do I really get back into the stage where I am so I'm actually demonstrating the sustainable human behavior, because it's not always me, right? I have learned something about me, but yes, what can I do? So if I'm sharing that experience of mine, maybe someone else is also learning from that experience, right? So hence that loop then starts, right? Then
One small, maybe one small,
yeah,
if I can share,
yes please, yes
I've
please.
seen a very good practice with many corporates. I mean, that's where our major exposure is.
Yeah,
That especially during the pandemic time,
yeah,
they're kind of expectation that don't start any meeting
yeah. Mm,
unless start the meeting with just checking with everyone, just check in,
mm,
how are
mm,
you guys doing, is everything at home, right?
mm,
As much as socially, and people are open and discussing, so just check about well-being. Don't start the meeting, even business meeting, just to bang on with the business results or the reviews, but just
absolutely,
take few moments
right,
to check on the people, how are they doing. In fact, I know certain organizations where they hold specific meetings, or
right,
they scheduled
right,
just to check on people in the team member. The manager would check in sometime that, hey, just want to check, is everything okay, you guys are vaccinated, right? Do you need any help? As a deliberate action, it's not just a passing comment, but just as a ritual, and then it gets into habit and a ritual, and that also drives certain behavior which otherwise in the corporate, sometimes who cares, right? You're so running after your own target so much. So I
absolutely,
think that I saw a positive in some corporates that I know.
right,
It is a kind of ritual they've gone into, and I think I can relate to what you're saying, that you can't teach that, but as a rule, or but I think, but if you keep doing on a sustainable basis, with
yes,
the right intent, genuine intent, over a period, it gets into your habit that you will normally will start before the meeting or otherwise,
yeah,
hey, how are you doing, kind of thing.
absolutely,
Really mean about the welfare.
right, right. So I
Thought
mean,
of sharing this.
no, that's so amazing, Sanjeev, and you're right, because see, there is one, there's one action where here it says that leaders need to demonstrate sustainable behavior, right? uh, because it again ties to the aspect of social learning, it ties to the aspect of learning by observation, right? So it is so important for leaders to do that, and like, thank you for sharing that, because it's amazing. Because if that is basic, when you do that, the person who's actually receiving that call, I mean, you feel so good. The person is not just calling you for work, but that person really cares. I think that is where your happiness for self and others, that well-being, that person, and the person who's calling, maybe a manager or a leader or whoever, is actually in that life state of self and
Hmm.
well-being, in that stage, right? Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, wonderful. Right. Yeah. So the other thing that could also be is something called savoring. right? Now savoring, I just quickly mentioned that savoring is nothing but where you it's an act of just stepping outside of an experience to review and appreciate it. Now if you do that, and especially, what happens is, when you do that, right, as a third person, right, you're observing, and actually experiencing and reviewing and appreciating that experience. What happens is that, it intensifies and lengthens the positive emotions that come with doing something you love, right? So for example, it usually works for things that you really love to do. For example, it could be, having a cup of tea with your child, or it could be, anything, watching a movie, or anything like that. So, sometimes it becomes very, good if you just savor that. You step out, and then you observe, you think about that, and you live the moment in that sense, right?
Mm.
Right. Then of course we talk about, course correction obviously comes in when you have this, you're aware, then you self reflect, you savor, then when you do course correction, then you obviously set a goal, right? Then you commit to something. We might go ahead and confide in someone about the goal, right? I mean, something that I want to really do, right? And then what happens, that person then becomes a buddy. This is a buddy system, right? The important thing is that acting in small steps, right? And this basically, in that sense helps, because obviously if I have a goal in mind, we all know, a huge end target, if I don't break up into smaller targets, and then I don't keep achieving those smaller targets, because achieving those smaller targets are really gives me that kick, right? It gives me that happiness, right? And then that ultimately leads to the final object or final goal, right? Then we all.
In one of the session, I
Yeah.
heard something very simple. Random act of kindness every day.
Mm.
Every day. It was very simple message that every day in our life, if you want to
Yeah.
be happy and peaceful,
Yeah.
if we can look for opportunity for random act of kindness, it
Yes.
could be small things, very, very small things, just helping someone crossing the road. I mean, it could be anything, anyone who needs help. And this gives a lot of internal peace and happiness. So that spreads the
Absolutely.
positivity around. So that
Absolutely.
random act of
Yes.
kindness is something that got registered
Yeah.
with me, and look for those opportunities, that abundance, in our day-to-day life.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm not sure how many of you done this course, but definitely on Coursera there's course on science of well-being. It's by Dr.
Okay.
Laurie Santos. Please, it's a must course to do. And I think that savoring part is where I picked up from there. Okay. And this random act of kindness, Sanjeev, also Dr. Laurie Santos says, and she's backed it up with again psychology, all right, with a research. So definitely a do this science of
Would
happiness.
you mind putting it in the chat so that
Yeah,
people
I
can
will do.
register?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
just put in
I
the
will.
chat.
I will do that.
Bec-
I will do that. Yeah,
Otherwise, we will not remember it. Thank
yeah,
you so
yeah.
much.
I'll do that. I'll do that. Right. So yeah. So as Sanjeev, the next slide, I think we've gone on to the right. Yeah. So I think we've spoken about the small steps. We've talked, yeah. Then emulating the behavior that others want to follow. So I think we discussed that, as leaders, I think it becomes very important to emulate that behavior, and basically that, because that helps in that positive outcome, which actually, that positive emotions, it really, sort of resonates with the positive emotions a bit that we want, right? And also sets the social norms for others to follow, right? And it's also ensures that, it sets the behavioral expectation for what the team should do, right? So hence it becomes, as leaders, very important to really emulate the behavior that we want others to follow, right? Then educate, I think, is very, very important for us, once we get deeper into it, to really educate, and especially the younger generation, right? Because what happens, they are the ones the planet is going to go to, in that sense, right? And the sustainable behavior is actually not just for well-being. It actually, like I mentioned in the start, it incorporates all the other SDGs, right? Because the base of actually ensuring that all the SDGs happen is this sustainable human behavior that needs to be done, right? So hence it becomes important for us to really educate the younger generation about this, right? For example, in telling them that the problems that we face, right? And the behaviors, we can actually change our behaviors, because sometimes what happens is they might also think that this problem is just too much, it's beyond me, I'll not be able to sort of change my behavior to bring any difference, right? But when we actually educate them based on this knowledge about the life states that we have, the sustainable human behavior aspect, right? When we sort of tell them that the behaviors can be changed, right? Then that helps them to cope up, right? Cope up that sense of cope up from that sense of helplessness that comes, right? Gives them hope in that sense, right? And so hence it becomes very, very important to really educate. I'm saying, of course, younger generation, but I think educate everyone that we know. And often enough we also think that okay, UN, and they're talking about the sustainable development goals, it's happening somewhere else, but actually it is here, right? It is important is that what is the behavior, what is the action that we are taking, and what behavior am I demonstrating right here, right now, within my sphere of influence, right, within my home, within my office, within that team that I know, right? And within my society, what is the behavior that I'm emulating, right? That becomes important, because those small steps that we take here and now within this sphere of influence that we have will have that ripple effect, right? If each of us do that, that will have that ripple effect, and it is obviously going to then sort of engulf the world in that sense, right?
So
So
Mimi, one
yeah,
comment, if I
yeah,
can.
yeah, please,
A
please.
little curious because you touched upon the younger generation few times,
Yeah,
and my impression is, and you may agree or you may disagree, is that the newer generation, the millennials,
yeah,
they value it much more than our generation.
yeah.
And I also know, when even in the corporate, when
Hmm,
they look for the next employment,
hmm,
they very well check what are the value system,
yeah,
how much are they contributing to the environment and
right.
sustainability.
Yeah,
These
yeah,
are important for the younger generation much more. That
right.
in our generation we went for maybe the brand and how
Yeah,
big the company is, what
yeah,
is the job
yeah,
security.
yeah.
Today's generation, in my view, is much more responsible
Yes.
and much more sensitive to these topics than the earlier generation. Is my any comment from you?
Yeah. So yeah, the shift is happening definitely, Sanjeev, because again, when I say the younger generation, is also the education part of it, right?
Hmm.
It is also, when I'm saying earlier, catch them early on, in
Yeah.
that sense. And actually what is happening is, and again, it's a lot of research that I skipped through, right? Skimmed through in the sense, right? It also talks about sustainable education. A lot
Hmm.
of focus is happening on that, because catch them young, right? And then really bring about that behavior change in them now, right? So yes, you're right, there's a lot of in the I think there is a lot of shift that is happening in the youth, and I know from
Yes.
observing my own daughter, right? I mean, who's just stepping into college, and again, it is lot of it, that awareness is also coming from our teachers, right? From, of course,
Hmm.
from the way the teachers are now actually taking up sustainable education as part of the system. So everyone across are sort of firing through, because if you see, it is 2030, we just have a decade left to really achieve this, right? So I think everyone across is really now focused, and I'm sure obviously organizations are also doing it, in different various ways they are actually doing that. But yeah, you're absolutely right, the shift has definitely happened, the younger generation is definitely more aware, and I think they are the ones
Yes.
who are also wanting to act more faster and do that in that sense, right?
Absolutely. They're going to live this life, right? I mean, so they have to invest. And I think that's I'm very happy about the way the new generation is taking it up. So they're much better than the previous generations.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
yeah, so, and of course the last one is be a lifelong learner. So the whole idea is we have learned something, the important thing is unlearn, relearn, use, then again unlearn, relearn, till like whatever, just keep learning. That's
Yeah.
the whole way, right? I mean,
And
learn.
you are the one, you're still doing clinical psychology. You're a lifelong learner in literally. All right. So yeah, so any other
And
comment?
yeah, and then just this last one, this last slide, yeah, I just wanted to sort of end this, it's, I think, very much sums it up. It says that, like Hans Christian Andersen, right? It says that to be of use to the world is the only way to be happy, right? So hence we, so I'm sure a lot of us is already doing it, but that's how it is. And thank you so much, Sanjeev, for this opportunity. And um, yeah, yeah, I mean, I
Don't
think
worry,
it's
it
a
is
learning
still,
for me also because I had to go and do some research on this as well.
yeah, it is still not over. Don't worry. I think we'll have many questions. I have few, so we are not letting you go so soon. But on the happiness, you're right. I think to make the, to be of use to the world is the only way. But another dimension is keeping good relationships. I'm reminded of a huge research that Harvard had taken, and this is the longest research in, I think, social psychology
Hmm.
or social science so far, which is running for 75 years and
Yeah,
still running.
yeah,
And the study is about what are the what are the determining factors for someone to be happy and healthy, as simple as that. And this study is going on for 75 years, still on.
yes,
The gist of that study is that if you keep positive relationships around you,
yeah,
that is one single most important. There are many factors,
right,
single most factor
yeah,
that make you healthy and happy, period.
right,
I think what you're saying is goes exactly in the same line, that if we can invest in our relationship and caring for people around us,
absolutely,
that will give us happiness in return in multiple times, multiple folds, is the simple message that I think that I'm carrying from
yeah.
your talk, right?
Yeah, absolutely right, Sanjeev. And I think the more we, we demonstrate the sustainable behavior, right? The more we do work on that, right? If you see, obviously relationships get built,
Yeah.
right? So that's how it is. And we also, I think, somewhere, that the end life state of, true happiness, I think the more we work on this, we actually also, get into that realm, right?
Hmm.
Where we have the true happiness. We are, nothing bothers us then. We are that steady. I will
Very
have
honestly.
problems in my life, it will come and it will go, but I am the steady person. And it takes time. It takes
Takes
time.
time.
We will touch it, of course. There are, like I said, those life states are fluctuating. It's not that I'm only in one life state throughout. I'll keep going up and down based on the circumstances I state. But the more I work on myself, I will be more in the higher life states.
So let me pick up some questions. In the meantime, can you put the on the chat the
Yeah, I
author
could.
that you mentioned? Put in the chat. And team, I mean, if you can, if you have any query, comment, about this topic, if you want to ask Mimi, she is there for a few minutes. Put it in the chat or unmute yourself if you can. So go ahead. And while Mimi is typing the name of the author, which for our reference that we can, learn from. So any question from anyone? Put in the chat or unmute yourself and ask that. So we have a few minutes. We can leverage that. So Mimi, I have one question while others are coming. See, and I'm coming from the corporate world because this is where we spend a lot of our time on. So this agenda for being the wellness and happy wellness is certainly is talked about quite a bit on in the corporate world also. But I haven't seen the connect between the sustainability goals that you have, goal 3, sustainability development goals. I don't see that connection. So do you think in the corporate, in their core values or their well-being initiatives, somewhere there's a linkage to this overall UN goals? I haven't seen that. So do you see that happening, and what could we do about it?
So Sanjeev, what I believe is that I think well-being in some corporates there have been a lot of focus on already.
It is. It is.
There has been a lot of focus on, but I think the awareness, no, about the SDGs and all of that. I think the momentum is gaining now.
Okay.
Because like I mentioned, it's just a decade left, just 10 years, 10 years more, right? And there's actually lots to do. if we actually go into the UN site, right, and we go and find that, right, the action points that are there, there's lots to do. And I think now people are, that awareness is happening, and now this thing is, because I think time is running out, that time pressure thing happens sometimes.
But I think, yeah, I think as one thing we could do wherever we can, if we can connect this larger global world goal
Yeah,
also to our well-being policy and the philosophy
yeah,
and the initiatives, it'll
yeah.
gain momentum is what I'm feeling. But I mean, I learned a lot here. I did not know as much about this before, honestly. So if we can connect, that will be better. All right, so let's see if there's some more questions. But in the meantime, these are some of the clients that we service. That's okay. But I just wanted to share with you that we are doing another knowledge session. And guys, we are coming back after a few months because there was a turmoil. A lot of people were busy, and we did not hold the knowledge session. But we are getting back. So we're doing one more session on 6th of October, and this is taken by Ms. Palak Doshi. She's a great, facilitator and a wellness consultant and a coach, very acclaimed, very young and smart. So she's doing a session on 6th October, and this is on, again, on the mental health and the silver lining. So it's a very interesting session that you would like to attend. If you are interested, you can register at the website, which is given, www.enablingworld.com/events. Or you could conveniently, if you want, if you have a smartphone, you can scan the QR code and straightway go to the registration page. We will be sending this link to this program to you guys as well. So you could possibly leverage that opportunity as well. So look forward to that session. And so there's a question from Kalyan. It says, any tools or ways available for people who are suffering from the pandemic to achieve mental wellness, and easy and accessible, not very complicated solution. So he's looking for a very simple solution.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, there's the degree to that as well, right? I mean, in the sense that if it is anxiety, or if it is any kind of other kind of a thing where it's a little serious, then obviously definitely talking to a mental health expert, right? That is one.
Yeah.
Because again, like I said, what is the range, right? If it is really bad, it is very, very important to actually have a discussion with the mental health expert, because if you actually look now, there's no, earlier there was a stigma attached, to talking to a mental health expert.
No more, no
No
more,
more.
less.
There's
Yes.
no more that stigma attached, and it is in fact that's very important to do that. The other things that you can really do that, of course, if you are that kind who you can take up any kind of exercise, because I found that extremely useful to really stable, because there's this lot of happy hormones that get released when you really actually work out, right? That you can do. I mean, you could do any kind of yoga, any kind of pick up meditation. There are a lot of places, there are positive affirmations also help, correct? And so these are a couple of things that you can definitely, very easy to do. Again,
Thank you.
a lot of resources that are also available.
You're right. I think that's a great point. So we have a young participant from New Zealand. That's Arshia. So Arshia, I understand you wanted to ask something. So go ahead, unmute yourself and ask.
It was more just some comments, because you were talking about the youth studying sustainability. I actually am studying sustainability over here. I'm in the final part of my specialization in sustainability.
Wow.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. We have an expert.
So I just had a couple of comments to make. First, about the psychology stuff. I really appreciate it, because as you know, that one of the 3 pillars of sustainability is actually equity. So that looks into that. So we actually learned about this thing on the idea of values, and how we actually did an experiment in class where we would answer a question, and our instructor would give us some chocolates. And there would be a group of us just, getting the chocolate, but she would only pass the chocolate to one person. And it was a subconscious effort for that one person to pass on the chocolates to the people who were participating. And that basically just sort of showed and reinforced the value of how it's sort of an innate nature within us to actually share stuff. So I guess I just thought that would be an interesting additional comment to make about the sustainability of emotions and stuff, because I believe that has some relation to a research done in the past with relations to apes. Secondly, there was a question about relating goal number 3 of the SDGs into the corporate world. I can't remember. I think it's goal number 11 or something, where it's basically talking about economic growth. And there's also goals about education. So the entire link is, the moment you have a good mental health, everything else just falls into place, because you can look at it in this way of, oh, okay, cool, my labor is happy, they will be productive. Or another thing of, oh, my person's happy, we will have good relationships. That will create a good environment and everyone will be happy and do their work very nicely. So yeah, those are all my comments. And I loved it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful hearing that from you, Archia. Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, so I mean, the young generation with such mature comments is amazing actually. So thank you, Arsha. So
I
with
was
that,
actually,
go
sorry,
ahead.
I was actually just saying that your website's actually perfect, because I have an assignment to you tomorrow for sustainability, and so I was like asking, like, hey, could I use some of your resources for it? So it's perfect timing. Thank you very much for this.
So we specially designed this course to help you do your homework.
Yeah, no, that's what
All right. So thank you. Lovely to be to have you here in the session, Arshia, and contributing. So with that, thank you everyone for joining and for your your queries, questions, and the comments. Thank you, Mimi. It was a wonderful session. I learned a lot, a new aspect about well-being and where does it connect to the world. And I think we'll do our own bit of random act of kindness and creating a positive environment around us, and then gain in the process is a commitment I'm going with. I'm sure all of us will do that. So thank you very much for joining. With that, we'll close the session today. Have a nice weekend and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you so much.